Firstly, we don't have any apologies, so that's good. Does anyone have any declarations of interest on the agenda items for today?
Not me.
No declarations of interest. So we can move on to agenda item 3, which is the Police Scotland Local Committee Performance Report, and which Chief Inspector Alistair MacLeod is joining us today. And Inspector Isla Campbell. Good morning.
Morning.
Morning, Chair. Thanks very much. I'm relatively new.
I think he's frozen.
No, back again. Sorry, you were just frozen there for a minute.
Can you hear me?
We can now, but yeah, if you could start again, please. Sorry.
Well, okay. I was basically just saying good morning and looking to introduce myself to the members of the area committee. I've been in the post for South Highland since August, so I don't think I've had a chance to meet any of you yet. Generally, I think the area inspectors are the ones that talk you through the report, albeit it's my name that the report's been sent out, and it's me that's done the introduction to it. But what I would propose to do is let Isla talk you through any aspects of the report, if you're happy with that, and I'll chip in, and I'm here to answer any questions, obviously. So, Chair, if you're happy with that, I'll let Isla speak to the report initially.
Yes, that's fine. Thanks, Isla.
Thank you, Chair. I hope you've all had an opportunity to have a look at our performance report, which covers 1st of April 2021 to 31st of March 2022. So the data we're talking about has occurred a few months ago. If we can all remember that as we go through. The Chief Inspector in his intro has alluded to the fact that our statistics are somewhat skewed since we had the COVID lockdown, and you'll see as we go through, some statistics have gone down because of that and some have gone up, and I suppose that's just the way of how society dealt with that lockdown at the time. We had some wins and we also had some losers in terms of particularly online fraud. As soon as everybody went online, the criminals took up the opportunity to make hay. So I don't intend to go right through the report, which I'm sure you're glad to hear. One of the things I did want to just touch upon, because it may be a matter of concern for you, in our antisocial behaviour disorder and violence reporting, our serious assaults have increased, both against the 5-year average and against the last year to date. Now, that actually alludes to 7 more crimes. The statistics looks horrendous, but it is 7 incidents, which I had a close look at, and I can see no pattern of behaviour or any particular location or anything like that that would give us cause for concern. I'm hoping that's just going to be a blip. We still have a very good relationship with all our licensed premises. It's not to say that all of these occurred in or nearby them. And we continue to do Operation Kiva, which is our proactive drugs operation when we visit the town centre in numbers to detect and deter drug offences. And with that, we do some good quality inspections of the licensed premises as well. So I'll move on from there. Good to see that our acquisitive crime has reduced, but we're not naive enough to think that that will continue with everything opening up and the cost of living crisis that's started but has by no means fully given the pinch that we expect it to do. And as I said, fraud offences, they have gone up quite significantly as well, just because of people using online more often, things like companies being defrauded by their email being hacked and slightly different bank account details sent to their customers to pay them, things like that. And the amount of just basically internet traffic going on, whether that be somebody who buys something on eBay that never actually gets posted to them, things like that. I just circle back actually to the antisocial behaviour section of the report, and just to let you know that here in Lochaber we're forming a community alcohol partnership, which is mainly aimed at young people, making them and their parents aware of the effects and risks associated with underage drinking. So we're doing a survey currently with Lochaber High School and some other schools to see what the real kind of picture is with young people and their alcohol habits and parental habits as well, because certainly in other areas of the country, what's coming through loud and clear is that children are not buying it from licensed premises. They're being given it by their parents who think they're doing the right thing, but then aren't supervising them while they have that. So that's a great new tactic we'll be deploying in the area, and at some future committee I'll probably be able to share some statistics with you as to what those surveys come back with. And in the same breath, I had a note from Dot, the area manager, in relation to a bit of an update for CCTV. Cherry, you want me to just give you that just now, although it's out of kilter?
Yeah, no, that would be good, thank you.
Yeah, so interestingly enough, we host the CCTV facilities at the police station, but it is a Highland Council asset, and it's run for us all by a company called Enigma. Just recently, over the last year, the system has undergone an overhaul, and most cameras in the town centre and beyond are digital, operating on fibre optic cables. So we're looking now at a much better quality product than we did beforehand. There are still some gaps in the infrastructure due to building work in the town centre that we have every reassurance that one will be fixed and put back up on the wall as and when we can get it done. So the CCTV is operating very well just now in Fort William, and you know, if the members felt you wanted to see it in its working way, you could come to visit the police station and get a general tour of the building as well if you would like. So that's all I have to say about CCTV just now. Don't know if there's any questions on that. Okay, just move on.
A quick one on that, Ada. Angus McDonald here. Just a quick one on that. I mean, I've seen it, and it is amazingly detailed. You can almost see the colour of people's eyes.
Yeah.
Is it monitored the whole time?
No. It's monitored part-time. It records 24/7, and I think the future aspiration, but I'm not sure where we're at with that, is being able to monitor it from Inverness, and that's part of the upgrade process.
Thank you.
Sarah.
Good morning, Isla. Just a quick question. Do you have plans to make the public more aware of the cameras so that they know, you know, how to report a crime if a crime has been committed not far from one of the cameras?
I think there probably would be a town centre plan exists with the placement of the CCTV cameras, but you know, we would immediately go to CCTV if we have a crime reported to us. We wouldn't rely on the individual identifying that themselves.
Andrew.
Morning, Isla. Presumably, you have some figures at the moment showing what the older CCTV system produced in terms of prosecutions. Do you anticipate, you know, comparison with the new system to see? Because as Angus says, if you can actually see someone in detail, you can more easily determine, or what's the word I'm looking for? Identify. Thank you. The person from a good picture.
I don't think that's data we've kept historically or currently going forward. It would be quite hard to kind of pinpoint CCTV as the sole thing that detected a crime, because usually we take lots of different items of evidence across the board, whether that be witness evidence, forensic, that sort of thing. So CCTV may play a small part in a detection, but not the full amount. But if you cared to come and have a visit, I can let you see the system in operation. And I think if there's been any concerns about its capabilities, I think that'll put that one to rest.
Thank you. Thanks for the invitation, Isla. Oh, Angus, I think we have another question.
And Thomas has got his hand up.
Oh.
Isla, Angus MacDonald again. There's very substantial drops in lots of things reported on this, which is great, apart from the fact you told me that we were hugely short of officers. And I wonder if that results in quite a lot of the drops, because if speeding, for example, offences has dropped substantially, for example, if it has, that could be that you have half the number of officers out doing speed checks. And I wonder if the data is really reflective of the work that is done rather than the shortage of staff.
Yeah, in terms of road policing, then that is a separate department that is hosted at Fort William Police Station, and they are generally pretty well staffed. They go through periods like any other department where people are injured, or if they have, they cover the whole of the Highlands and Islands. So if, for instance, there's been a serious road collision north of Inverness, somebody who works here might have collision investigation skills, and they get sent up to that, which also takes them off the road for that particular period of time. But generally we get a very good service from them, and our local policing officers, most are trained on the roadside radar gun, and they'll deploy that as much as they can, particularly if there's been concerns raised by a community council or anything like that. They'll try and commit high visibility patrols to the area. So yeah, I think the Chief Inspectors want to come in there.
Okay, yes.
Thanks, Chair. I think that's entirely it's an entirely reasonable point to make, Councillor, and one of the, it's not necessarily entirely to do with staffing levels. I mean, our deployment model in Lochaber hasn't really changed in recent years. We're running with a handful of vacancies at the moment, which we're working towards filling, but that's proving challenging nationally for reasons that won't be lost on you. But one of the things that stands out for me is the drop in drugs possession offences. That's maybe one of the other ones that you picked up on, and similarly the drug supply offences. Now these are offences that generally rely on proactive policing to pick them up. There's the odd occasion where that's not the case, but generally it relies on proactive policing. So you would expect to see a drop in these things if there was a drop in police officer numbers. This is a challenge we're facing across the Highlands and Islands to try and get numbers back up to pre-COVID levels. And I think probably that some of the proactive roads policing stuff falls into the same category, where we were effectively told not to stop cars unnecessarily, not to do stop searches on people unnecessarily for a period of a year or two. We're still actually trying to claw back that level of proactivity amongst officers, and it's an ongoing piece of work. And I just wanted to highlight that basically for your information. So yeah, we are running with vacancies in Lochaber, a few, but there are other reasons why some of that proactive policing type offences are down. We're aware of it, and it's a matter of concern, but it's something that we're working on to try and just, like I say, claw our way back to the pre-pandemic levels of proactivity. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Alistair. And Thomas.
Thanks. Can you hear me okay? Can you hear me
Yes.
okay? Are we just on cameras now, or can we ask anything on the report at the moment? Like, is it questions about the whole report we can do right now?
Yeah, and questions
okay.
about the whole
right,
report.
and the first thing I was wanting to ask about was page 6, driving offences. The 5-year average is 40.2, and it's shot up to 59. It leapt off the page at me in that bar graph that that's a heck of a jump, and with what could have caused it. The second thing I was going to ask about related to cameras was, whereabouts do we still have the cameras that are scanning the trunk road? Do we still have them? As you know, I was a councillor before, I've been away for 5 years, I've come back. Have we got them monitoring like trunk road traffic all the time? I believe there was one at the Ballyhullish Bridge. Do we have any more? And I suppose if you can answer that, I can come back with a couple more questions.
Thanks,
Yeah,
Thomas.
so I'm presuming you're comparing the 5-year average for drug driving offences with the year to date, which is 59, which is a variation of 6. Probably what's started to filter through into our statistics is that we've now got the capacity to carry out drug wipe tests on the roadside. So what you're finding is that a lot of people are getting dealt with for that now, which didn't exist. We didn't have that capability in the past. They had to be really quite visibly and incapable of driving before we could arrest them for drugs, whereas now this is basically a black or white test. So they've got them in their system. Then we bring them into custody and take blood. And I suspect, although I wouldn't bet my next month's wages on the detection rate is low there, because there then is a delay at the lab where they analyse the blood, and the detection comes possibly a few months later when the officer is able to put a report to the procurator fiscal at that point. So that'll be why the detection rates are sitting low, because it's generally a proactive thing. You know, that if somebody reports somebody they suspect for drink driving, and we stop them and they blow a negative breath test, we don't record a crime for that. You know, so there's rarely a crime recorded without a detection. It's just the detection comes later.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
About yeah, that's fine. That explains that anomaly. The trunk road cameras, do we still have them? Have we expanded that system?
Yeah, we're still in a very good position there, and they're frequently triggering for things like missing people who've driven up from the south of the country, and things like that. So yeah, that system's working fine.
And the other thing I was wanting to ask about was like the police cars. I remember raising this the last time I was a councillor. The unmarked ones, like I know we've still got them, but over the last 5 years, I've been in company with a couple of younger people, and they could tell me right away what the unmarked police car was in Fort William. So do we rotate them fairly regular? Because I don't know, I think it was a dark blue BMW estate, you know, and every kid in the town knew it was a police car. But
yeah, we do rotate them, but you would be surprised at how many detections they get still, with the fact that the car ranges are very well known.
Yeah, and the other thing I wanted to ask about was Pub Watch, a thing that's dear to my heart, but is it's still on the go? Is it still functioning as well as it used to? What's the membership like, etc.?
Yeah, one of the last meetings I was at, there was new membership, so they're still meeting regularly, still doing bans. One of the problems that we have encountered, although we as the police are still very much involved and see it as a positive project, we've been unable to provide the members with pictures of people who've been banned, so they can share that with their staff, which is quite a big kind of deal, really. And there is hope that there's some work ongoing in policy within Police Scotland about whether we can do anything to get around that or not. So the members do find that difficult, because you need to know what somebody looks like before you can enforce a ban. But we're not finding ourselves, when we're going into the pubs, we're not finding people who are banned sitting in locations. I think with the kind of the nature of Fort William, the size of the town, most people eventually will get an image of somebody from social media and things like that if they're motivated to, or their own CCTV, in fact.
Okay.
So.
And the two other points I just wanted to make. One was about like rural policing. I have about nearly 20 years of being a councillor and attending rural community councils, and over the years, when the police make contact with a community council, you could see a level of agitation in the room because the police didn't come to this meeting. You know, keep in contact with your community councils. It really does benefit you greatly. And I would say that every effort should be getting made to make community councils provide a digital platform to contact them, so that the police officer doesn't physically have to travel to in Lochaber. You know, we've got the real ridiculous distances we have to drive to get to communities. An online police officer, you know, just reporting. It's incredible how you would see the temperature in the room sort of settle down a little bit the moment the police officer walked in and just made contact with them. Even if you had nothing to report, basically, it just seemed to reassure communities. And I would urge us to keep contact with your rural community councils. And the other thing I was wanting to ask about was the digital scanning of accident scenes. I started raising this 10 years ago, and I was just wondering, do we have it in Lochaber? Are we going to get it in Lochaber? Everybody in this room knows that if we have a car smash and it's serious, we're looking at 10, 12 hours of a roadblock and 100 plus detour, 100 plus miles of a detour to get round it. Are we any closer to getting digital scanning technology in that police station, or have we got it? And just your thoughts on that, please.
Okay, so in terms of rural policing and community councils, you've probably picked up perhaps in the press that we've resolved our commitment to Struntian by doing a programme of works to renovate the police houses there and the police station. And I know that the officers there are very well kind of plugged into their community councils. We're also doing a Lochaber wide review just now of who has what job to do in relation to community councils and schools and points of contact for other agencies and things like that to refresh that, because we have had some changes. And in that, I probably am looking to plug that gap of an officer fully intends to attend your community council meeting and then gets dragged off somewhere else, that if we can at least provide you with a quarterly, or community councils with a quarterly newsletter, just everybody will get the same one, but at least they'll hear what the police are doing in the area. So it's something I'm very keen on, and I've always said to the community councils that I don't attend them all myself because I would be meeting myself coming back, but I'm happy to come along as invited. And what the officers in Struntian have done and are about to do again is bring together all the chairs and secretaries of the community council for me to come along and meet them all in one fell swoop and reassure them. The digital recording of crash scenes is something I've not checked up on lately, but and I've had a period of absence, but I believe we're still in the same status quo that the actual kit would have to travel. There are people trained in the area, but the kit has to travel. It itself is not the travel time. They tend to get here pretty quickly. It's then the let's stop, assess the scene, get it right, because ultimately somebody's life has changed quite significantly, even if there's not a fatality involved. And so there's just more to the simple fact of the kit being nearby. That would save you maybe an hour and a half. But the actual process of the scene, if it's a very complicated one, sometimes we're having to put DVI officers through the scene because it's been particularly horrific, and we want to make sure there's nothing left behind. So there's lots of different factors to the road being closed for that length of time, but it's not lost on me either. I've been here long enough now to know particular places if it closes, but we are quite slick now in that we're looking at how we do our diversions and how we do care for people if people are trapped between accidents or anything like that. The one thing we wouldn't do care for people is if people can turn around and head back to where they came from. We wouldn't do it then, but it's something I'm very much alive to. I think that was that your two. I wrote them down as you were speaking.
Yeah, I think you've covered them all pretty well. Just to say, I'd love to see the roads getting opened up quicker, and we need these investigations to be painstaking and thorough. You know, we can't cut corners, and if it takes time, it takes time. Yeah. But having the technology here would save a bit more time. And
if you treat them like a crime scene, you know, and it can come down to things like being able to work out whether an indicator was flashing at the time the collision, and they can do that depending on if nobody's stomped all over their scene. They can that changes the picture for a serious injury or fatal collision, and you know who might be responsible quite significantly. So they have to treat it with real care.
I think the chief is wanting to come in.
Yeah. Thanks, Thomas and Isla. Yes, Alistair, did you have something to add to that?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. It was just in relation to Councillor McLennan's point about the community councils as well, and in addition to what Isla's talking about there, my expectation is that each community council should have a named officer allocated to them. So at the very least, they know who to expect that report to come from, and they have somebody they can contact with routine business for the community. So I'm sure that's in place, but if not, it'll be part of Isla's review for Lochaber. That was just the only point I wanted to make about the community councils. Thanks.
If I could just come in quickly, sorry, interrupt one more time, but I raised it with Alison Clark, whose remit community councils come under, at a meeting 2 weeks ago, and you know, society has built up a chance to exploit in that we've had 2 years of COVID where we all got digitally sort of up to date and started getting used to it, but it's that opportunity is now beginning to dissipate. We're going back to normal, and in a rural contact way, we should be exploiting what was built up over the last couple of years, where we got used to going online and communicating with each other. So,
if I just could come in there as well to say that every police officer in the Highlands and Islands now has access to Microsoft Teams, so you know we're more than happy to join electronically.
Thank you. John, have you got a question?
Morning, Councillor John Grafton. Thank you very much for the report. I'm being a little bit specific here to do with antisocial behaviour and use. I am still getting reports from Cool of damage in the toilets in the community centre, of harassment to old people on the estates. I think there's probably a specific youth group involved in that. Can you give me an idea of how you're sort of working with that? I realise that police numbers obviously affect this.
Yeah, so throughout the summer months there, and we've continued it into the autumn, we've been engaging with the youth action team and Highland youth workers, and on a Monday night, the AstroTurf pitch at the Lochaber High School has been opened up for the young folk to be able to play football. It's gone down a real storm. The numbers have continued to rise, even in the terrible weather. And our relationship with the group that were initially selected to attend that because they were on the fringes of, you know, antisocial behaviour, criminality. The relationship between them and the police has really evolved, which is making life an awful lot easier to manage when we tip up to a scene. We've now been joined with the fire service and that, and the whole project is basically just growing. We've got really good links with the Highland youth workers, and they're able to help us with, you know, what they're seeing, that the young people can be a lot more honest with them than they will be with the police. And then we'll kind of amend our patrol plans accordingly. But I do know what you're talking about in Cool, and it's something that I've asked our preventions and intervention officer, who's recently back in post for South Highland, to have a look at, because like you say, we can't be there all the time. But if we can get into the schools and get that message across to them, it could be a new wave of young people. Usually, anecdotally, what I see is as soon as the first years move up to second year, they get a bit braver and maybe get a little bit more latitude by their parents or their carers, and you know, there's some pushing of boundaries goes on. But overall, we're not too badly off for antisocial behaviour, but we do see the need to crack down on it, especially if vulnerable individuals are being targeted.
That's lovely. That sounds really good. Thank you very much.
Thank you. You still have more of the report to go through, Isla?
I was just having a wee look at my other highlights I wanted to bring up to you. I think I've covered most. The only thing perhaps to note in the vulnerable people section in terms of missing persons, there's a little note there that we have Spocks attached to all the looked after children's homes in Highlands. That was actually a piece of good work that came out of Lochaber, because we have 3 homes in the area with looked after children in them, and it's a kind of similar to the football, when those relationships are built up between the staff and the charges of the home, everybody seems to have an easier life. So just wanted to highlight that came out of Lochaber and has now been rolled across Highland as good practice. But you know, you've had plenty of opportunity to have a look at our report, so I probably won't labour the any more information on it, but happy to take any additional questions.
Any more questions, Sarah?
Good morning again, Ayla. Hate crime. We hear in other parts of the country that it's on the rise. Do you think that it's underreported in Lochaber or in the Highlands? And is there any work done with schools to raise awareness of what constitutes hate crime?
I'm seeing the Chief Inspector nodding there, so I don't know if I want to let him come in on that.
Okay, yeah, Alistair, that would be good. Thank you.
I can do, thanks. Without having the local context, I do think that there's still work to be done in terms of reporting confidence in hate crime. Across the Highlands, we've got third-party reporting centres which are there to encourage people to report hate crime without having necessarily to report it directly to the police. That's an example of what we're doing. It doesn't seem to be, if you look at the numbers are relatively low, and I'm really grateful for that. My position is there's always work to do in terms of improving confidence in reporting these things. Actually evidencing that is slightly different as well, but there was a couple other points I wanted to come in on as well. Ayla, in terms of hate crime locally, is there any local context you can add to that?
No, again, there's no significant pattern to it. Repeat victims are in the minority. We obviously have quite a transient population comes through Lochaber, particularly in the summer months, but pretty much all year round now. So there's nothing we can pin, you know, any like what should I say, kind of drivers for it. We've looked in previous years and again this year, and there's nothing we can see that's driving it.
Yeah, and in terms of, Ayla mentioned repeat victims, and we review these crimes and incidents very, very carefully for the existence of repeat victims or repeat accused or offenders, for that matter, and you know, appropriate intervention is put in place should that be the case, certainly.
Any work with schools about raising awareness of what constitutes a hate crime?
Yes, certainly part of the school inputs. Generally, we cover hate crime, but also in a targeted way if issues arise. And I can't speak for South Highland because I haven't seen this in my short time here. But in the previous areas I've worked in, we were able to put in targeted inputs in partnership with the education department and schools in areas where a particular issue arose or there was a spike in a particular type of hate crime, and we would certainly be in the position to do that in the Lochaber area if that were to arise.
And Alistair, I think you had a hand up earlier on. Was that to cover a couple of other points?
I'll be really brief, thanks. Just a couple of points of concern for me are the detection rate for housebreakings. So we don't have a high number of housebreakings, particularly in domestic dwellings in our area. And again, that's really good. I would expect the detection rate to be higher than 22%, to be honest. And I know that concern is shared among the crime managers in the division, and so that is being reviewed. It's just a bit of a word of reassurance that these incidents, these crimes, and the work that's been done to try and detect them is being reviewed at the moment by management and CID, just in case there's anything that we're missing to try and improve that detection rate. Frauds we spoke about very briefly, and Isla mentioned that we've got a new preventions and interventions officer for South Highland, and Paige MacDonald, based in Fort William. Fraud is a real frustration because it's a national issue. Obviously, it's online, it's organised crime, but it's really difficult to watch every day more and more victims coming in falling for the same scams, and we do what we can to try and raise awareness of the common methods that people use, and that'll be a key task for Paige in her new role. But you know, vulnerable people are targeted, and vulnerable people fall for these scams, and clearly there's a gap in we're not getting to everybody, and we're trying different things in terms of you know, the banking protocol is something that's mentioned particularly in the report there, but the really common methods that people are using, you know, folk are still falling for them day in, day out. So there's work for us to do with that, and I hope with the new preventions and interventions officer in place, we can see a bit more in terms of targeted awareness raising about that to try and prevent people from falling victim to these frauds. And again, the detection rate for the frauds is low. There's nothing much I can say about that other than that they're particularly difficult to detect, because they're generally organised overseas, and the opportunities for inquiry into them tend to be quite limited. But again, it's a matter of concern locally and nationally that we're working on. Just wanted to highlight that couple of things. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much for that. And Isla, would you like to come back in?
Yeah, it was just something that the Chief Inspector mentioned there that made me remember about some initiatives that might be worth mentioning. In terms of the domestic house break-ins, we do see a bit of an issue in the remote and rural areas where are attractive to people while camping, that we've had a few crimes recorded where they've actually broken into an unoccupied holiday home and used it for the weekend. And then usually there is a theft involved there because they might have taken booze or whatever like that. They are quite hard to detect because they are rural. A lot of the time they'll leave DNA marks, but if they're not on the register, it'll take until they are on the register to track them down. But with that in mind, I just wanted to mention that we've done quite a lot of work this year in a joint agency response to the problems caused by the visitor management into these tourist hotspots. We've really kind of worked hard on identifying when the peak periods are, and then get together with the wardens and my officers and try and give these areas as much attention as possible to reduce the problems associated. And it's been working quite well. We in the police now have an off-the-shelf operation we can use up the peak weekends we've identified by bringing in extra officers and asking the wardens to report back to us what they're seeing when they're visiting campsites and things like that. So just wanted to highlight that it'll be something that we'll continue to do if the problem continues to exist.
Any more questions? Thank you very much, Isla. And I don't think we've got any more questions. So I think have you covered everything you wanted to?
Yep.
Excellent.
One more thing. Sorry, I had mentioned it to Dot that you are welcome to come along and observe us doing our operational safety training next month. It'll be at the Cool Community Centre just to see how we run our drills and what sort of kit we use, and meet some of the officers.
Yeah. Thank you very much for that, and thank you for the invitation to come along to the police station as well. I think we'll be in touch. Thank you to Isla and Alistair for that update. It was very useful and lots of questions answered there. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks very much, Chair. I'll send my contact details to Alistair just to distribute around the members. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Yeah. So moving on to item 4, which is amendment to speed restriction orders for Ardgour and Akarkal, and we've got area roads manager Richard Porteous has joined us to tell us about that. So thank you and good morning, Richard.
Good morning. Thanks, Chairman, members. Thanks for allowing me to join remotely as well. And so this report is a area roads report asking members to approve the proposed extension to the 30-mile-an-hour limits on speed restriction orders at Gower and Akarkal. So hopefully that's good news, and it's really nothing too controversial. Everything is contained within the report. So probably maybe just invite any questions from members. Otherwise, hopefully it's fairly straightforward. Thank you.
Agreed.
Agreed.
No questions? I think, and I think the communities are in support. So it sounds like we're all very happy to approve the proposed extension.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. Appreciate that. And
thank you, and
nothing
thanks
else
for
me.
your time.
And we'll see you soon.
Yeah.
I think maybe later today. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Richard.
So item 5 is the housing performance report, and we've got Debbie Delaney for the Service League for Housing and Homelessness joining us.
Debbie should be online.
And
yep.
yes, with good morning, Debbie. Thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Morning, Chair. Thank you very much. Morning, members. My name's Debbie Delaney. I'm the new service lead for housing and homelessness across Highland. Just took up post mid-September. So I'm here today to present this morning's housing performance report, and I've also got Angus Laurie with me today. Angus is Principal Repairs Officer, so he is able to answer any questions or queries about the repairs related issues. I won't read the report in its entirety because you will have had an opportunity to look at the information and the figures within that. But the first section, section 5, is the average time for non-emergency and emergency repairs, and you can see that both emergency and non-emergency repairs are well within target and also below the Highland average across. Moving on to section 6, this is the average relet time for properties across both wards, and you will see that performance in Ward 11, Cowell and Mallig, is over the 35-day target. There's a little explanation there of 5 properties that have impacted on this, 4 of which we took the opportunity to upgrade those properties whilst they were void, which lengthened the time, and 1 property that was delayed due to NHS assessments. Ward 21 is slightly over the 35-day target due to 2 outlying properties within that, one where family required additional time following the death of their family member, and one due to a refusal from an allocation, which has just pushed that that time slightly over our target. So section 7, this shows the rent arrears across both wards, and it highlights an increase in rent arrears, which is currently a Highland-wide trend. Due to the current economic circumstances, the cost of living, all the issues that you'll already be aware of, that are extremely challenging for tenants at this particular time. But the area team are working very hard to offer support, signposting where people require assistance with various things. So that's an ongoing issue, but as I say, across Highland in general. And Section 8 is statistics around homelessness, which we don't report back to the Scottish Social Housing Charter, but we do bring to local committees, so you'll be able to see the figures there within the graph. And yeah, Angus and I are happy to take any questions if any of you would like to ask anything.
Andrew?
Debbie, hi. Andrew Gordon. Is there a national definition of homelessness? And are you referring, at least these numbers refer to individuals or families? I mean, if it's a family of 4, are you counting that as 4? Could you just talk around that a bit, please?
Yeah. So there is a national definition of what homelessness is, and what that means for people. So the figures here are around presentations. So that could be an individual person, that could be a large family. If it's a family making a presentation of homelessness, that's classed as one presentation. So the makeup of those presentations can be quite different.
And your response to request for housing, presumably you have a scale hierarchy, how you respond to that. Usually the single males end up at the bottom, women with children are higher up. Am I right on the right wavelength?
It very much depends, really, because you know, with our allocations policy and the points that we award to people's housing application, that's based on a person's individual housing need. So that reflects the you know, sort of where they are within those points categories. But in terms of as you mentioned, they're single people maybe at the bottom, if you want to call it that. It's not so much that, it's that the demand for 1-bedroom properties can be quite a lot higher across various areas than it can be for maybe 2-bedroom properties, which would perhaps house a family with a child. So it tends to be less about the points that somebody's awarded and more about the availability of the property type that individual or family needs. So again, large family properties can be in high demand and low stock, so that can cause a little bit longer of waiting as well.
Thank you.
Angus?
I've got 2 things, and I think one of them would probably come back to Angus, but
Okay.
we went on a trip around Clagan, and I was absolutely appalled by the state of those buildings. So the gutters are rammed full of turf, basically, and have not been cleaned for years. And you can see where the water runs down the walls. The downpipes are blocked. Where the Harling had been patched, the buildings weren't painted over. They had back boilers, and you could see coal outside the buildings. So people have been dropping coal, but they're taking out for back boilers. Many buildings, I don't know if it's most, but many of them didn't have double glazing. And I know there's a problem between the combination between private and public sector in the same buildings. But I was really shocked by the condition of the properties. And I'm sure I should have been before now, but it is not the quality that I hoped that we would have in Lochaber. And I don't know where we are on that, but if it was my house, I would be ashamed.
Yeah, I think I'll let Angus come in on that one. He's probably better placed to answer that question.
Well, in terms of Clagan itself, obviously we've committed to some investment there, and in terms of what we discussed when we were on site, and that was the £120,000 to make whatever kind of improvements we can with that money to the quadrangles and to the guttering and the downpipes and the things that was highlighted. We do have the Rate Your Estate walkabouts, which would involve the local community groups to try and get them involved and improve the areas, so that that everybody is kind of getting their say on what they would like to be done. the individual flats, I guess that's more of a kind of asset management and capital investment kind of question, really, and that will be down to funding, where we want to direct funding, what funding we have, and where we want to go in the future. I mean, Clagan flats themselves are probably, Thomas will know, but 60 years old in that kind of region. So, you know, any building is set out for a kind of 50-year lifespan. That's kind of the standard, without kind of large investment. So I guess the question is more of a kind of capital investment and asset management strategy, and where we're going with that. That's not something we could do locally just in terms of day-to-day repairs. It's kind of a wider question, I would say. I don't know if Debbie has anything to add to that.
Angus, I dispute that entirely. If the gutters are not emptied, that is not capital investment. It is day-to-day management, which we all do in our own properties. And not painting it where it's been patched, building, is unforgivable. And where downpipes come into the drains, there should be some sort of hopper at the bottom rather than the drains sealed into the ground, because then you can't clean them. Honestly, it is not capital investment. It is basic management of our own properties as if it was our own house. And I honestly, it was shaming to go around there.
That's not really what was meaning by the capital investment. It's when you were talking about the back boilers and the properties themselves, and the lack of double glazing. I don't think there is actually properties without double glazing there, but it's more from that point of view, not the repairs of the externals.
It's 2 points. It is both. And I don't know, I haven't been around the other public sector buildings, but I absolutely will, you know, as soon as possible, because I blushed. I didn't want to speak to people in those houses if they said, "Are you happy with the way our houses are being looked after?" Because I couldn't have said yes.
Yeah, I think maybe that's, sorry, I was just going to say, maybe that's something that Angus can take back and discuss with Lackey, and then we can take that further during ward business meetings if there's particular concerns over particular blocks and particular.
There's also an article in the Sunday Times which I thought I would draw to attention. It said there's a Scottish government target to refit almost 1 million homes to improve energy efficiency. And it said that last year only 3,000 homes were upgraded with zero or not zero emissions, such as heating system, heat pumps and biomass boilers. It goes on to say that it means that 124,000 homes will need to be upgraded every year between now and 2030 to hit the Scottish government targets. And I wonder how we are getting on with our housing stock, where the money is coming from this programme, and a bit of an update on that, because back boilers don't seem to satisfy any of our ambitions in that.
Can I just suggest we bring this back to area business meetings, and we can, for further discussion, and then we can understand the budgets that Angus and others are working with, to sort out these issues.
Okay.
Thank you.
I just come in quickly there, Kate. Sorry, that again is the part of the capital investment programme, which I think either be Jonathan Henderson or Rory McLeod or maybe Brian Cameron. I'm not sure who will be doing that. We'll be coming back to you with capital planning for next year and beyond.
Yep. Thanks, Angus. We'll do that. And Thomas has got a question.
I was just going to come in. Everything that Angus said, I totally agree with. But on behalf of the staff, we're really getting put on the spot here. I think it's a bigger discussion for the full council. Like, I've been involved with Lochaber Housing Association, and what I can't get over is the different way that they're run as a housing association. I'm frantically trying to remember the term they use for it, where they set aside money every year. If I pick one random item out of a house, like kitchens, they set money aside every day, every year for planned maintenance replacement of the kitchens. Whereas at a council, and a Highland Council is no different to any other council, it's a bun fight of who's going to get the kitchens replaced. And that attitude permeates it all the way out to gutters, to everything. There is no planned maintenance with money set aside to back it up. And it's for council staff, it's a constant firefight. And I would the job that these guys are doing, you know, you're being asked to make a silk purse out of a sow's ear, to be honest, with no money. And I have noticed that at housing institutions, they do it differently. And I feel that councils should look at going down that line. It would take a long time to get to it, and I wish I could remember the term that it is called, where they do that planned setting aside of money to do jobs. And these jobs are getting done. But at a council, it's basically a firefight. If whoever's got the worst condition, kitchens or gutters or whatever, they get the money. It's not done as a matter of routine at a council, whereas at the housing associations, it's much more planned. I don't know if the staff have got anything they would like to add to that.
This is probably slightly anecdotal and not based on figures, but what I would say is that I think that they generally in a better position in terms of their stock, newer stock, and stock that's, you know, a better starting point. And in terms of the funding, I think they are in a better position. If we set out what it would take to replace all the bathrooms and kitchens we wanted to or needed to, and put that against the money we have to do it, I think you'd be looking at a long time. So it's really an investment thing. The money doesn't exist, and that's why it's the highest priority, bathroom or kitchen first, not a rolling program into the future and beyond. That's where we would love to be, but in terms of the investment we've got, it's the highest priority, and that is defined at the moment by the local maintenance officers who are in and seeing the properties and have eyes on the kind of the highest need areas.
Thank you, Angus. Sarah, have you got a question?
Good morning. Thank you for the report. Just a question about the time for repairs. I mean, I've had some very good experiences with some, contacting the council on behalf of tenants with some work being done very, very quickly. But I've also had sometimes experiences which weren't so good. And one of the issues I found was the time it gets sometimes to get goods delivered. So do we have a problem with suppliers? Because, for example, and I've got a tenant at the moment who's waiting for a door, and apparently it takes 6 to 8 weeks for a door to be delivered. That sounds like a long time.
6 to 8 weeks is fairly standard. Sorry, it can be as quick as 4, but 6 to 8 weeks is fairly standard if it's a UPVC door or window that has to be measured and made to size. For a while, we were looking up to 3 months. That was kind of just straight after the pandemic. But also when you mention materials, we do have issue with all sorts of materials, and I think we talked about this in our walk around Claggin, because that particular house that we looked at was waiting for a fireplace, and sometimes we can wait 6 weeks for a particular fireplace. There seems to be no rhyme or reason to what it is that we're waiting for, or sometimes it can be a particular type of bath, can be 4 to 6 weeks. So yeah, I do think we do have a lot longer waiting times for materials, so that is an issue.
Thank you. Anyone else questions before I've got a few. Thank you for the report. Just a couple of I'll go through the questions. In terms of when someone refuses a property, what happens? Do they then go to the bottom of the list again, or what is the process involved with that? And you mentioned, obviously there's quite a large amount there in terms of rent arrears, and it's gone up a bit, and my screen's just gone off. It's gone up a bit from the last quarter. So could you just expand a bit on what the support and assistance is being given to people who are in rent arrears? And when someone presents as homeless, obviously there'll be different reasons for that. Where do they go to the top of a list, or in terms of being housed, or does that depend on what their reasons for presenting as homelessness are? Thank you.
Thank
Debbie,
you.
I think will be.
Yeah, it'll be, so I'll start with the first one you've mentioned there, when somebody refuses the allocation of a property. So that can be dependent on the reasons why they've refused it, and whether they are somebody who is in a homeless situation or somebody that is an existing tenant. So they're looking for a transfer to another property. So when somebody who is a transfer, so they're existing social housing tenant, and they are offered another property and they refuse that, they are absolutely well within their rights to do that. It does not impact on their points level, where they are on the list at all. That's well within their rights, and they can have, 2 refusals within a 12-month period, and we'd be wanting to have conversations there about why the refusal was taking place, but it doesn't impact on their, within the list system where they are, or their points. So that's the people that are existing social housing tenants. Then you've got people who are in a homeless situation, so they're maybe living in temporary. So under homeless legislation, people in that scenario are entitled to one reasonable offer of mainstream housing. Now, somebody is in that position and they refuse the property, that's when we need to look into, again, their reasons. Reasonable, what's reasonable, and that in itself can be a bit challenging, because reasonableness can be a little bit subjective, so it depends on where you come from. So that usually sparks a conversation about their individual circumstances. So if at the end of that process we're saying, well, actually, okay, we accept that you can't live there, again, that doesn't change their position on the list, it doesn't change their point, they aren't temporary accommodation or anything like that. So if we're sort of consistently offering people in a homeless situation reasonable housing solution, there's a consistent refusal, then sometimes we do get to the stage where we're saying, well, actually, what you've been offered is reasonable, and we can look at discharging our homeless duty to applicants under that scenario. It's something that we try to avoid to do, but there are occasions where that does happen. So it very much depends on the individual circumstances as to how that's dealt with. Does that answer your first question fully?
Yes, thank you, Debbie.
No problem. So question 2 regarding the rent arrears section. So there are specific things we can do. We can signpost to Citizens Advice Bureau. We can look at the council's welfare team, and the welfare team will look at income maximisation, budgeting, ensuring that everybody is getting exactly what they are entitled to and getting. There's also the Ally Energy Scheme, which has been really useful. The Affordable Warmth Service for Lochaber Housing Association and Highland Council Lochaber as well. So again, very much dependent on the individual circumstances as to which service we would signpost them to assist with the issue that's causing the rent arrears to build up, and sometimes that's something that fixed in quite a straightforward manner, and other times it's a little bit more complex, but it's quite individualized. But there are various ways we can go. And your last question was around when somebody is presenting as homeless, and are they my understanding of your question there was, are they prioritised? Where do they go on lists, and are they so yeah. So there's a basic set of points that everybody gets when somebody presents as homeless on the Highland Housing Register, and that will be their starting point across the board, same for everybody. And then there's also an entitlement to 2 points per month if some in our temporary. So it doesn't really matter what the circumstances of the homelessness is. If somebody's made an application and we have made a decision on that yes, they are homeless, and yes, we have a legal to resolve that homelessness, then the points are the same, and the reason behind the homelessness doesn't affect the priority of that, if that makes sense. Has that answered your questions? Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I guess just after Thomas has got question 2, which if you just one more. So if someone presents as homeless, how long usually will it be before they allocated a home?
So that's very much dependent on a couple of different things. Firstly, where they're looking to be rehoused, and secondly, the property type and size that they require. So there are some properties that are in much higher demand than others. If people's requirement is of a property type that we have quite a high turnover of, then they will be housed on off quicker than somebody who
We've lost you.
Oh, sorry, did I disappear? So yeah, dependent on the size and the area as well, because each area will have a different makeup of stock. So it's very hard to kind of give a definitive answer as to how long somebody's homeless journey will be, because it's so dependent on those factors.
Okay, yeah. Thank you. And Thomas, you had a question.
Yeah, it was just if we can return to the scene of the crime in Clagan and the flats and the blocked gutters. And I was going to ask this question specifically to Angus. Angus, given your proud heritage and culture and coming from the plumbing industry, how would you solve that problem? And I don't mean this as a criticism of you in any way, shape or form, but how would you solve that problem? We have 3-storey blocks of flats in Clagan. We have 3-storey blocks of flats in Upper Akintour. I think we have 3-storey blocks of flats in Kinlochleven. And within all these blocks of flats, you've got rented from the council and private landlords and people who own the. Could you just outline, A, how would you solve the problem? And B, maybe Debbie could come in and tell us about the problems of the shared ownership aspect of then trying to solve the problem.
Well, I think when we went round the building, I said how ridiculous that we should have shared properties, and I think we all agreed with that. You know, we shouldn't be selling off blocks of properties within flats. I don't know the answer to that, but I do know the answer to. I do not know the answer to the problem, but I do know that it is an enormous problem which we have to face. Otherwise, 60-year-old buildings.
Angus, can I just stop there? You don't have a proud heritage of plumbing. It's the other Angus. So I was meaning to ask the question.
Sorry, I certainly don't. I apologise. I thought the criticism was coming. I naturally assumed it was towards me. Okay, thank you.
So in terms of the practicality of actually do it, that's the difficulty straight away in terms of how you get up there, even is because the days of just doing that off a ladder, I'm afraid you can't do that anymore on the health and safety grounds. So I did mention to the members when we're out, we've actually done a drone survey of the whole of Clagan, which has been completed now, to see what all work needs to be done, and we've also purchased I can't remember the brand name of it. I think it's called a Skyvac, so you can clean gutters from. We don't know if they'll reach from the ground on these flats, but it may reach from a small platform. So that's kind of two things we've done in that sense. the problem, and Debbie will probably want to come on this, the shared problem is obviously an historic one from the sell-off. And we do have that across all sorts of issues, whether it be guttering or anything else in communal areas. There is we do have the ability to do things in an emergency, but it's when things are not an emergency, that's when it becomes much more difficult if the private owners aren't willing to contribute. I don't know if you have anything else to add to that, Debbie.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, Angus. It's very problematic and is a historical issue. But you know, we do try to work closely with the private possible to try and resolve some of these issues. And additionally, you know, there's other aspects we can do where, for example, if a private owner is sell their flat that is in a block and we own parts of that block, it might be a property that we consider purchasing so that we can try and reconcile all of and then that come off the back of having the different types of ownership. So it is challenging, but there are things that
your speaker, your microphone keeps
oh, sorry, I'm having some
cutting out.
issues with my laptop at the moment. Did you catch any of what I said there?
Yes, yeah, just there was just a couple of words here and there. But
Sorry,
just, yeah.
apologies.
I'll just add to what Debbie said there too, that we do also offer a scheme at times when we point them in the direction of grants. Sometimes there will be grants available. And the other thing that we can do, and we have done in this past, is allow them to pay up. So they don't have to pay the lump sum in a manner. It can be done over, you know, an agreed amount of time.
Sarah.
Just a question, something completely different, about people who are homeless or people in temporary accommodation, for example, they've just arrived in Fort William. What I've discovered recently is that when the circumstances change, they have to start their application again. And people in temporary accommodation or people who are homeless, well, their circumstances will change quite a lot. Some of them actually will move from one home to another. I've got an example of an essential worker who's just moved to Fort William, and circumstances will change quite a lot. Her husband will move over in a few months. She's moved in different types of accommodation, and each time she's got to start again. Is there a way we could simplify the procedure when you just need to update the address but not having to start everything again from scratch?
Yeah, I mean, I think that if it's somebody that's in a homeless situation, there shouldn't be a need to continually make more applications once your original application has been made and there has been a legal decision made on your homeless application. So there shouldn't be a need to redo applications there. If we're talking about a housing application not under homelessness that goes onto the Highland Housing Register, and perhaps in the case that you're discussing there is around when somebody moves to another property, they're then having to restart the process. But we should be able to do something around just changing the address. It depends how long it's been in between. So we try and keep the amount of applications that people are having to submit to a minimum. And that particular case that you're talking about there might be one that we need to get into a little bit more detail with the area team to actually have a look at why that's happened.
Angus?
The Moorings Hotel, I understand, has been given over to migrant accommodation for the winter. And you might not know about this, Debbie, but it's a 4-star hotel in Corpus. And Ballivy. I wonder, Angus, you might know about it. Presumably they're there because they're waiting for housing to be found for them. And I wonder if anybody can update us on that, because people are asking.
Okay, Debbie and Dot can answer that too.
Oh, yes.
I don't know, sorry, Debbie.
Yeah, no, Dot, you go ahead. It's okay.
My understanding of the situation is that the Moorings Hotel has been sort of nominated as a hotel, but I don't think there are any refugee families in there yet. But yeah, it's a holding circumstance until they manage to find housing elsewhere, and they're matched in. That's being matched in all the offers of accommodation that came forward previously.
Do we have accommodation available? Housing?
It's the resettlement team within housing, which makes those allocations that are made between our own. It depends which scheme. If it's the Scottish Government Super Sponsorship Scheme or the Homes for Ukraine scheme, they're matched different ways. So it is a process going through. But my understanding is all the offers that have been made, all the properties have been checked by the council, so there's no delays there. But as they've been matched, not always. Not often the offers are taken up, so it depends just again as when people want to take up the offers of housing. Don't know, Debbie, if you had anything further.
No, I think that covers it, Dot. We obviously are involved. We've got the refugee resettlement team that does some work, and we have various strategic and operational meetings around this exact issue. But yeah, I did just agree with what's summarised there.
Okay. Any all questions answered? Thank you. So I think that's thank you very much for the report. Very useful, and thank you for your time, Angus and Debbie.
Any thanks.
Thank
Nice
you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Yeah. Thanks. Bye. So item 6 is play park funding update, and Debbie Sutton is joining us, Amenity Services Manager. Good morning, almost nearly not good morning, Debbie. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning. Thanks for having me along. Yeah, it shouldn't take long, I don't think, to run through this report. It has been discussed already with members at the ward business meeting. So members agreed at the Communities in Place Committee in November 21 to allocate the funds from the Scottish Government Play Park Renewal Fund to the area committees. And that's based on a blend of play park conditions and the criteria used by the government. So members agree. This report is proposing that the members agree the distribution for the Lochaber area, and we are proposing that funding is split. This year, the funding allocation for Lochaber is £40,225, and we're proposing that that's split equally for the 2 Lochaber wards. There's also an additional point that we would like to get agreed, which is the allocation for Ward 21. They have a remaining balance from their 21-22 budget of £13,844.18, and we would request that this is allocated to the amenities budget for continuing to maintain the play areas within the wards. So Lochaber currently has 34 play areas and around 202 pieces of play equipment, and although the provision of play parks is not a statutory duty, the inspection and maintenance of the equipment once installed is a mandatory requirement. At the moment, the revenue budget for play parks in the Lochaber area is £13,000, which includes the labour, the plant, the fleet and the materials, and a small amount of contractor costs. During 21-22, the wards in Lochaber agreed to allocate an additional £6,380 from their ward COVID funds, which was added to the Scottish Government allocation. We've also included in the paper the future allocations for the Lochaber area for your information, and we would propose that equally the allocations are split equally across the coming years. But for today's report, we're looking to split the 22-23 allocation. And at 5.4 in the report, it details what last year's money was spent on and the reason for the balance that you have in Ward 21 for the £13,844.18. I'm happy to take any questions if any members have any questions about that, or if you're happy to agree as proposed. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions? Andrew.
Debbie, morning. Invergary Play Park had a roundabout this is going back into the last session, it was found to be inadequate, although the local community council members reckoned £120 on a new bearing would have sorted it, but that's by the by. It was removed. There has been a quote obtained for a new one. I forget the figure, 6,000 to 8,000, I can't remember now, from the supplier. But it has to be installed, you know all this stuff, I'm sure, officially, by an officially approved contractor. The quotes they've had, apparently, for installing this thing, digging a hole in the ground, putting a bit of concrete in, is about £12,000. This is absurd, I believe. Are you aware of this?
Thanks. No, is the short answer. I'm not aware of. Are you saying the £12,000 is in addition to the cost of purchasing the?
Yes, the cost that an officially Highland Council approved contractor wishes to charge Highland Council for digging a small hole in the ground, filling it with concrete and mounting this thing in is more than the price of buying a new piece of equipment. This is nonsense.
Yeah, that does seem to be very expensive. I mean, the place that will probably include the surfacing, but generally we find the cost of the equipment.
That was the summary basically that was given to me verbally yesterday. So I'm passing that one on. Please for your attention. There is something wrong.
Yeah, that definitely doesn't sound right. I'll find out about that one.
Rant over.
Okay.
Any other questions? The section 5.4, are you able to give any updates on progress being made on those the four projects that are going on from the last bid, communities bid, the West Arden American Fort William Shinty Club, Community Carrickle and Seward?
No, sorry, I don't have any updates on that, but I don't know if Dot may be able to provide an update on any of those. Amenities weren't actually involved in the allocation. It was allocated in a similar process to the ward discretionary funds, and communities bid into the ward for contributions towards their projects, but I haven't heard how any of them are progressing.
Okay, thank you.
No, sorry, they are individual projects done by the community groups themselves, so we can check for updates on those and get those back here.
Okay, thank you. John?
Just a quick question, Debbie, thank you very much. In terms of the revenue and the funding, I'm aware of a specific incident in Cool where a play park that was under community ownership is possibly being handed back to the council. Do we have sufficient revenue to actually upkeep the play parks that are in existence?
Thanks for your question. No, the short answer to that is unfortunately no. The previous discussions we've had with regards to the revenue funding is we have around £50 per play park per year for maintenance, which won't even buy one swing seat. So unfortunately, no, we don't have sufficient revenue fundings to maintain the sites we do have. I'll need to check about that one at Cool and what the agreements were there about whether that's transferring back to us. But if it does, we'll have to find the money somewhere to at least inspect and keep it safe. But we probably wouldn't be able to put any replacement items in.
Any other questions? So I think, so what we're being asked is, do we agree to, as the questions in our agenda, to split the allocation and allocate the remaining balance in Ward 21, as Debbie explained at the beginning? Are we in agreement on that?
Yep.
Yep. Okay, yes. Agreement there, Debbie. Oh, and John, have you got a question?
Sorry, Chair, could I just ask that the revenue situation and the funding of play parks be brought to a business meeting in the future?
Yes, yep.
Thank you.
Will be noted. Thank you. So thank you very much for your time, Debbie.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Debbie.
Thanks. Bye.
Be happy to hear back from that one.
So item 7 is Fort William 2040 annual update, and we've got Fort William 2040 project manager Martin Culbertson has joined us in the room here, and I think we've got online, we've got Alistair Nicholson and Michael Foxley.
Yeah, good morning, Just, yes. Happy to join.
So, good morning, thank you for joining us, and I hand over to you, Martin.
Thank you, Chair. Morning, members. There's three aspects to the report that's before you today. It's the first detailed report on 2040 for 2 years, largely in part to the pandemic, so pleased to be able to report back today. The first aspect of the report is an update on progress with the individual projects that form the Fort William 2040 Master Plan. Members will obviously be aware now of the background to 2040 from previous briefings, so I won't recap that just now, but it's again summarised in the report. I draw members' attention particularly to paragraph 5.2, which highlights key progress being made since the last report, particularly to highlight various housing developments that are underway, Pool and Lochaber flood protection scheme, corporate marina, various active travel developments, the approval of the initial agreement for the new hospital, and full fibre connectivity for Fort William's public buildings. So those are some of the highlights there we would draw your attention to, and as I say, Appendix 1 gives a detailed update on each of the individual projects. A second aspect of the report is we would highlight a range of wider developments with 2040 beyond the individual projects. Those have been designed to raise its profile and make information more easily available and increase community involvement in the process as well. So we would specifically draw your attention there to 4 aspects of that. The new community stakeholders group, which has been set up, in the terms of reference were included in the report at Appendix 2, and Michael was elected as chair of that group, and I'm sure we'd be happy to take any questions on the specific operation of that group as well. The group has met twice since it was established, and its most recent meeting had a presentation on the new hospital development, and in light of that there were a number of communications issued by the group seeking to get further information and push for more progress in the development of the hospital. So I think it's been quite evident at an early stage that that group is going to be very active in the process. It's going to show its teeth, and I think that's really welcome. We have a new communications plan, and that was included with the report of Appendix 3. That outlines a range of measures designed to promote Fort William 2040 more effectively, and it's intended to encourage a more consistent approach across the various member organisations of the 2040 board as well, to really promote the identity of 2040 in a more consistent way. The 2040 website has been updated, and it now has a clearer layout and information about the individual projects within the master plan. That was one of the key aspects of public feedback that I picked up on earlier in my role, that people wanted it to be easier to go into that and find information about specific projects. We've also tried to improve the layout so it's clear that the projects are not operating in isolation, that there are linkages between them. And as you know, we had the first public consultation event on just last week. That was the first event since 2019. So 2 things just to say about that quickly. The feedback, I'm pleased to say, from the stallholders has been overwhelmingly positive about how they felt the day went and how useful they felt the day went, so it's really encouraged to hear that. The other piece of work there will be to collate the 2 survey forms that were issued on the day. That was about 2040 in general, and more specifically about ideas for town centre regeneration. I'm pleased to say, based on the number of reports printed and collected back at the end of the evening, it looks around 90 surveys for 2040 as a whole have been taken away, and 60 for the town centre. So we'll see what the response rate is for that, and look forward to analysing them. They're also available on the website as well, and there's a range of options for people to return them at various locations around town. And just finally, section 7 of the report sets out broad priorities for the coming year. for 2040. Those have included identifying, funding and developing a dedicated project manager for the town centre, looking at options for the future of the Nevis Centre, looking at responses to the publication of STPR2, Strategic Transport Review, at the end of the year, and general ongoing support for the projects that are currently within the master plan, and also to bring new project ideas into the master plan as well to help contribute to the 2040 vision. Very happy to take any questions you might have about the report, and obviously we have Alistair and Michael there as well.
I guess just before any questions, if Alistair and or Michael would like to contribute anything to what Martin has already said. Start with Michael. Yep.
Yeah, thanks very much. Yeah, Martin's covered most of it. I think with the composition of the stakeholders group with 6 community councils, 2 councillors, and the environmental group, who else? Oh, Val's on it. We should be able to improve the communications between and across each other, and that's good. We've agreed to meet quarterly. We've agreed to have an update on any specific changes from Martin, and we've also agreed to have a major item on each agenda. So the last time round it was the new hospital. I thought it was an extremely useful community event in Cool Community Centre last week. I couldn't make the evening session, but I ran out of time in the afternoon session going around the table, so that's good. And I can't remember the last time I've seen Transport Scotland in the Highlands, let alone in Lochaber. I'm dredging my memory, but I don't think they've ever escaped out of Edinburgh to actually confront real people on the issues. So that was really good. Just a little bit of colour on the Belford discussion, because I think this is where the communications between Highland Council, the area committee, and what the stakeholders group is doing is important, because we heard, whenever it was, a few weeks ago, to our utter dismay, that we're now looking at 28 before the new hospital opens. When I left the health board in 2018, it was due to be open now. It's taken 7 years, 7 years. I led the team with people like Dot and 6 public bodies, including High, that bought the site. And to be blunt, all we've got to show for it is this initial agreement, which is 100-odd pages of email with basically no substance. We still have no clinical schedule, and we still have no outline design. And to hear that an outline business case is going to take 2.5 years is frankly absurd. If organisations are going to run like that, then nothing's going to be done. So there's a big issue for the health board in terms of capacity. We've got a meeting coming up in about a month's time with the chief executive and the chair. And I think that's a good example when, if we all get together and we can communicate and put some real pressure on. An outline business case really should take about, at the most, about a year. And I think we need to confront the agencies, not too forcefully with Alistair and High, but we need to confront the agencies to come up with outcomes that deliver for the wider community, not just for Fort William, but the wider community around Fort William. So that was just our starting salvo at the first meeting, which was useful. Anyway, thanks, Chair, for the opportunity to speak.
Yep. Thank you, Michael. And yeah, totally we agree with you on many things you've just said there. Alistair, did you want to add anything?
A couple of thoughts. Yeah, firstly, delighted at how the public event went last week. I thought tremendous turnout and lots of really good conversations, which just improves the flow of communication in all directions and helps us all get a clear understanding of what's actually happening and what the priorities are. It's also really evident from Mark's paper and from those conversations just how much economic and community development is happening around Fort William at the moment. So we really need to collaborate and prepare for us to have a much bigger town as a much bigger impact in the West Highlands. I certainly agree with Michael's points around the hospital and the concern at the delays and the slow rate of progress. And Michael, happy to participate in that meeting with the Health Board if that be at all helpful. I'm very keen that we can continue these conversations and that we just think about how we're all using our respective resources to deliver these shared outcomes. I think we're on the cusp of something really transformational for the town. I agree totally with the references to Transport Scotland as well, and I think they had their eyes opened by coming and meeting people, and I'm sure they had their eyes opened on their journey back down the A82 last Wednesday night after the event as well. They maybe saw Rannoch Moor through a different perspective then as well. So they'll be a bit wiser, and I think a bit more engaged in understanding what the issues and challenges are from our perspective. Thank you.
Thank you, Alistair. So open to questions. Angus?
Sorry. I spoke to the Transport Scotland duo who were there in quite a lot of depth. And my opinion is what they said when they stood up, or when the lady stood up, was absolutely nothing. So it was a lot of pretty pictures, but actually absolutely nothing. And I challenged her on this. So I said, there are 3 or 4 issues. We went through what the issues were. And she said, we have to get engagement at minister level. And one of the things we talked about was the Corran Ferry. And she said, it is not an STPR2. If you want this to happen, you need to get Jenny Goulworth. Now, when I submitted not a motion, but a question to the Highland Council, Bill Lobbin said that she had agreed to come here. And that was at a meeting he'd had with her in June. And we're now 6 months later, and to my knowledge, it hasn't happened. And I would be very keen to find out what we can do about that, because Murray Bay doesn't have an answer for us about where the funding is coming from. So that is a big issue. When John Hutchison came to speak to us the other day about the NHS Highland Board, I got the impression, I've opened his email here actually, I got the impression that councillors have an opportunity to be on that board, and he very much encouraged Lochaber members to be on that board. And I don't know how to progress that or where we are on that, but I do think that was a very good point. And I can see that, Michael, you were on the board for a bit. Do you have any advice for us?
Well, they're looking for a new chair at the moment, and they advertise regularly for new members of the board. I was on it for 4 years when I was deputy leader, and then I was on it for 6 years. But I resigned in 2018. I've only resigned for 2 things in my entire life, but you could see the ship was sinking fast, and which is why I left. But I would encourage people, particularly with people with considerable stamina, to stand for. And there should be a joint committee between NHS, Highland, and the Highland Council in terms of the lead agency arrangements that were put in place, a decade ago. So it'd be good that there was some local representation on that as well. Thanks.
Yes, and to carry on this, as you know, it was voted by Highland Council. It's actually an amendment which I proposed back 2 weeks ago, that we will work with NHS Highlands to ask for updates. Could we have at a very forthcoming meeting, an award meeting, a discussion about how we're going to organise that to liaise and engage with NHS Highland as soon as possible, following the advice we have received from John Hutchinson and other people. Thank you very much.
Other questions? I've got one then. So thank you, and thank you to Martin for organising the community event last week. It went really well. There was a great positive atmosphere in the room, and yes, just So thank you very much. Well done. I'm just under section 7. I'm just looking at the going forward with the Nevis Centre, and I see there was a meeting held at the end of October. Is there any update on the outcomes from that meeting?
That was actually the understanding at the time, that there was to be a meeting with the Nevis Centre. That didn't happen at the end of October, but is now looking to happen this coming Friday, actually.
Okay.
The broad idea behind that is to hear the Nevis Centre board's views for how they would like to see future provision or structure of the Nevis Centre, and then to speak to council officials and Highland officials to see where that sort of what they need for the Nevis Centre.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so that's that delayed meeting. Okay. Any other questions? No. So I think in terms of the report, I think we were noting the actions that Martin went through, and also I think item subsection 2, support the proposal to develop a dedicated regeneration project manager, which I think we certainly a supporting principle, and I guess it's just dependent on funding coming forward for that position. That would be correct. Is that?
Proposing a change according to the recommendation.
Are we happy to support the proposal to develop a dedicated regeneration project manager post, which was, I think, is the one item we need to agree on this?
Is it the principle at the moment? Yeah.
The wording is support the proposal to develop a dedicated regeneration project manager post for Fort William as summarised in section 7 of the report.
I think the two I think the two principles of the whole 2040 meeting was the town centre regeneration and waterfront, and to do both of those, we do need this person. So it was the whole basis of the whole presentation. So I would be very in favour of having that person.
Okay, so we're supporting, everyone's happy to support the proposal to develop. Everything else we're sort of noting, it's just I'm asking for agreement on that.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. So thank you, Martin, Alistair and Michael, for your time this afternoon.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Martin. And well done last week.
Just there, Martin. It's a question you probably can't
Sorry,
answer. Sorry, Chair.
Yeah, can we move on to, if you could ask Martin afterwards, and we'll move on to the next agenda item. Thank you. Thanks, Andrew. Thanks, Martin. So item 8 is the ward discretionary budget, which we're just being asked to note. Is everyone's happy with that? We've noted. And then item 9, the minutes of the previous committee meeting held on the 30th of August, approved by council on 22nd of September, so we've noted that. And that is the end of the meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.